this is the most.
You stopped as you were talking about it.
Well, you have to do the introduction
Followed
first.
No, we can just
followed
roll in.
followed the foot fetish thing followed briefly by typing in young Doris Lessing in Google, and the very first question people ask is why did Doris Lessing leave her children?
Oh wow. Okay. No, what I was mentioning
Yeah.
is this cover. I have just a quick air of grievances before we get into the actual work. I want to talk about the more important things of who whose idea is it to do this type of whatever this is called.
The the
Or-
the jagged
Yeah, this jagged.
decal edge, I think.
Yeah, that person is. If they're part of your family, I'm sorry, but they're in purgatory and they're not going to get out because this was a bad idea. Like, I have to like lick my fingers like an old person doing accounting to turn every page because I have dry skin or I don't know what, and I feel like such an old, haggard person trying to change. And so, if you want a thumb to open to page 84, and you're like, I'm on page 700. Okay, let me go back one page. I'm on page 130. Like this stupid. I hate. Yeah, stop licking your fingers.
You need one of those the rubber tips that they used to use for like
Yeah.
counting banknotes, so you can get paper cuts.
And then like cool picture. I like this picture a lot for the cover. If you're not watching the visual representation of this, the auditory descriptors would be it's a young woman with a notebook and she's wearing like a nightgown, like she's cosplaying Peter Pan or something. She's going to be Wendy flying out the window at some point. So she's wearing a white nightgown with her knees tucked towards her chest and she's writing in a notebook. I'm assuming it's like a young, attractive Doris Lessing rather than the old, attractive Doris Lessing. uh, but I was just noticing because I'm just looking at everything very closely. Like, okay, I see like the different colors for the notebooks. That's cool. They have these, bars that represent the different color notebooks. And then her feet, she has like size 27. She has like Shaquille O'Neal feet. They're so
She
big. Love
does.
it.
They're giant in this
Like
photo.
that's like a European 45.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So,
that is they are quite big. Is that wait, aren't there five colored notebooks?
there are, but this is like,
Okay.
absolute toxic male. Tell me about the book. Well, let me talk about what I see visually because that's all that matters.
I
Like,
would
I
like
don't
to
care.
talk about Doris Lessing's feet for the next
Feet.
25 minutes.
Brian, hey Brian, welcome back. You were gone last week. What do you think about feet?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Feet.
if you're still listening to this is the 2 month review brought to you by Open Letter at the University of Rochester. We are this
Rex Ryan
season.
actually told me this was his favorite book. He's
Right.
he's never
I
read, he's only looked at the cover.
I
If
was
you don't know, Rex Ryan has a weird foot fetish, by the
I
way.
was digging for Rex Ryan's name there for a second. I could not find it. I was like, Bill's guy, Mr. Bill guy. And that it was not working. Jets, Bills. Yeah, so we're doing this season, The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing. Today we go up to page 159. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books. And joined as always by Kaya Stromanis, translator, senior editor. And Kaya, given your week, what color notebook are you writing in?
Um, I guess I'm feeling a little red. Very like succinct and to the point.
Brian, why do you hate the color red so much?
Because I'm an American? What, what do you mean, why? Uh,
And that's Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox, also
Yeah, I've been
here.
writing in the brown notebook. Everything I'm writing right now feels like shit. So,
So,
but maybe
good
one day
wish
it'll be
me luck.
gold, but not right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk. This is gonna be a quick episode because I have to get out of here for a retirement party. And
Oh, congratulations on
I,
your
you have no idea how happy I am to be stepping away
your
from my life.
is it your retirement?
I wish if I could
Oh,
retire tomorrow, I would, and I would never speak to another person again,
is
like
your
except from
retirement
you
party
two.
you jumping off a bridge?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, all
exactly.
right, guys, thanks for the cake.
I'm on the third floor. I think I can take this work pretty easily.
Good luck getting the windows open, sucker.
Oh, they let them know. They let them be open.
Oh,
The new
that's
ones are
right. They do
openable.
now.
Yeah, the new office
Mm-hmm.
has windows that open wide up, so you can just like fly, take a brainer right into the ground under here. But
Yeah, I
it's trigger
suppose.
warning, I guess. That's how that works.
Yeah, I guess fresh air is cheaper than a raise. So,
Yeah, raise in this economy. What are you thinking? Brian, you weren't here last week either. So, what are your thoughts on this? So, I guess I can prime real quick for anyone who listened last week. We got through the first section about Molly and Anna in the present moment, and then went back to Anna's notebook, specifically the Black Notebook, which is about her time in Africa and the material that led to the creation of her novel. And this week we get to see the end of that section in which you see how she kind of like takes the events from her life and sort of mixes them up, and this the book becomes an amalgamation of different characters and sequences and some level of fiction. I think that's pretty interesting. And then there's a short part about the Red Notebook, which is about the British Communist Party and is set after closer to the present time. Anyways, okay, that put aside, Brian, what do you think? What are your first thoughts?
I like so far. I think the structure is really cool.
Mhm.
Totally digging that. I don't know how much I like the actual content of it just yet. I think I'm gonna love it as I get into it, but for me, it was homework to get through the first 100 pages or so.
Interesting.
Um, but and I think it's just because of when I think back to like my forced stuff I had to read for like I don't know contemporary British literature or we didn't get to read Doris Lessing, but when I think of the things that we read from uh, early 20th century, I can see like where this fits and what it's built upon. It's gonna seem like low hanging fruit, but like you can see like the bits of like Amos, or you can see the bits of even like kind of like riffing off of Virginia Woolf, for instance. I don't know if that's an influence or not, but for me as an American, it's hard not to like everything is Virginia Woolf, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And you mean Kingsley Amis? We'll just clarify.
yeah. So
Not
yeah,
Martin.
the good one.
Hey, Martin's books are
Whoa!
amazing.
uh,
Amazing. Money is a book I think you would
but I
actually
like the way
really
that
like.
she would like distinguish herself from like a contemporary. I don't know. Would you consider like Muriel Spark to be a
Yeah,
contemporary?
and very, I think so, and very different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I find it really fascinating. I don't quite know yet, and maybe I shouldn't, what Anna or what Doris is trying to say. I have my thoughts about it, and I think it's really cool. But it feels oddly and very eerily, like extremely similar to Kathy Acker's Empire of the Senseless. It feels like this has aged incredibly well, and it's frightening how like her thumb is on the pulse of the future and has diagnosed it pretty spot on.
Fair,
Like
fair.
it's
Yeah.
really freaky.
There,
Yeah.
It's kind of freaking me out. And so I can see why this should be mandatory reading for people, just
yeah.
in general.
I mean, because of its length, I bet it's no longer taught in colleges as much as it probably was in like
Yeah.
the 80s and 90s, simply because the teachers don't want to lose students. We got to have retention, and long books are retentive. That's
Well,
wrong.
did you guys talk about fragmentation and
I don't remember what we talked
any of
about.
that last week?
I do have one
We
question.
talked a lot about the intro.
Yeah, the intro
Um,
was the main thing that we did talk about. I had
did
one
yours have
question.
two intros or just
Yes.
one? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, they're both in there, and that I thought that was really interesting. I thought that second one, the newer one, or no,
Yeah.
the later one, the earlier one, the first one that was written, but the second one in the book.
Yeah.
I think that one's super interesting. Or was it newer? Sorry, I'm looking now to
No,
make.
that was the older one because the
Yeah, it
newer
is the
one was
older one.
basically Lessing being like, "Wow, we're still doing this book, huh?"
And like, yeah, and all the critics and all that kind of stuff. I was going to say that one of the things with the structure of the book that I think is really interesting that I remember from listening to it and from just looking at the table of contents, but which it plays weird as we're going through this season, is that we have to go through another episode, our third episode, before we get done with the first iteration of the notebooks and the structure. So you have Free Women 1, the four notebooks, that we'll finish those next week, and then Free Women 2 and the four notebooks, and all of a sudden it starts to speed up. Like we don't have like we are not even through the first round. Like we've seen the black notebook part of the red. We have not seen the other two notebooks yet, and the golden notebook being a fifth one on its kind of separate part. So it's weird because that for the first 250 pages make up one round of five, if that makes sense. So that's kind of hard to to uh to really like assess like the scope of the structure at this moment because we're still like in media res in a lot of ways. Or that's the wrong term too, but whatever. But Brian, the question I have for you is you said that was like homework. What do you mean by it was like homework?
Oh, like I didn't want to. It's like, oh, I gotta read. If I'm gonna get done in time, I have to read 30 pages tonight. So it's like,
Oh,
okay. And I get like 5 pages in, it's like, oh no, how much longer until I get to 30? Like it's kind of having to like, I didn't want to read it, I had to read it.
ah, ah.
That makes sense.
So not
Yeah.
gripping.
Yeah. And that's okay. Sometimes it's a slog, sometimes it's easy. And it's different for different people. Like uh I didn't feel like I had to slog with Empire of the Senseless, and I imagine most people are like, "Oh my God, when is this over? This is torture." Right? So it's like,
Most, I am most people.
yeah, sure. Um, which is totally fine. It's just
Yeah.
like, how does it hit for you? And I'm liking it more and more as it's collecting steam. I'm starting to see the fragmentations. Like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, I just felt like, okay, I got to get through this.
What do you talk? For me, what happens when I start reading is the first few pages are slow going, and then it just like locks in. Like I feel like
Yeah.
that's the case with a lot of this mid-century sort of like writing. British writing for me is like at the beginning, I'm like, okay, 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 and then I'm like engrossed, and I'm like in the immersed into the space and like it. But when you talk about the fragmentation, talk about what you mean by fragmentation, what your interest is in that.
Oh, sure. Also, I think just real quick though, I think for me too, it's just like me, I'm a very like terse, tight, taut writer. I
Hmm.
don't waste a lot of space, and I don't write a whole lot. And so when I see something that's like, man, I could have done this 40 pages, you could do this in maybe like five. It wouldn't be the same thing, and it wouldn't be as good. And then in my mind, I'm like, all right, come on, all right, we get it. Yeah, you're both hanging out at the flat talking about shit. Come on, come on, come on.
You're the Elon Musk of British literature.
Well, you see here, I've got my fork here, and you could take this pen here. Oh my, it's quite amazing. Yeah, no, and that's okay. I don't mind, I don't mind
You,
Maximus. It's harder for me to read, and
I
it's okay.
I cannot imagine that you like the Substack that I sent out this morning for Mining the Delphi Archive about Pierre Albert Barreau. His writing
Sounds like
was
something I would hate. Actually,
absolutely you
it
would
sounds like
hate.
something absolutely something I would hate. It's like I might have to check it out. I like to torture myself. No,
It's only
so
90 pages long, but
I'm interested because sometimes I have to teach classes where you do like an overview of main, styles of literature. And this, I'm always kind of curious with this idea of how things switch from modernism to postmodernism and whatever that means. But,
yeah,
one of the hallmarks, when we think of, hallmarks of postmodernism, one of them being like fragmentation, breaking things apart. They don't necessarily have to make perfect sense or be in a perfect order. But this idea of we don't know what we think we know, and
yeah,
it starts to break apart, right? And I don't know if it has anything to do with like Schrodinger's cat or the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, or you
Gödel's
split an atom and a
incompleteness
bunch of
theorem.
shit falls out of it, and you realize we don't know anything. But one of the hallmarks is the fragmentation. And then I'm and I'm curious what your thoughts are on it, but there's a lot of other hallmarks. That's one of the big ones. And then when I think about kind of like what ends the boom of postmodernism, and I think it's cynicism. Things become like eventually everything becomes way too cynical, and then people are wanting some authenticity at some point. Kind of comes a little bit out of fashion. I could see the cynical nature of it becoming distasteful um, in the last couple decades.
Guys waiting for Kaya to respond. I was thinking like with the way that you're talking about postmodernism and that shift like goes back to like those early 60s and the ending of the 50s where personality, the family, the structures start to like become more fragmented and you as a person become like split apart in various ways, right? Like the divided self, the various other like more fragmented, more like disparate elements of being a person. And then now that's just like anyone who's born has that. They didn't experience that. There was never a whole point to go back to it. Sort of like the T.S. Eliot and the eyes in Great Gatsby, that like God is dead, things have fragmented, this sort of like unified nature of the world, and the idea of what it is has ended. Something has changed, but that was never there for us. We never had the first part, right? And I think with the fragmentation, the idea of postmodernism in that regard, and like kind of a social personality regard, is different now. Maybe because it's cynicism. I was thinking it's sort of like it just doesn't resonate because like people are just like, well, that's how we are. Like how would things be any different? I explain to my students all the time about how I didn't have the internet, and it just like blows their mind. Even though I think they theoretically understand that before they go in, the concept of what life was like without it is almost incomprehensible. So to talk about like how the internet like fucked up your brain, they can't see that because they don't know what it was like to not have your brain all fucked up. So like,
Yeah.
some of the fragmentation maybe is just that like what are you looking back to? What is being pushed apart or what is happening? So like I agree with you that authenticity is more, it's kind of like a David Foster Wallace moment where he's like all about the kind of honesty and then authenticity versus like that sheer like sarcastic, sardonic cynicism of like the Dave Eggers school of things. But
That
I
only takes you so far.
yeah. Yeah, and they're like trying to be real in a moment that's purely ironic is tough. But nowadays, I don't know like how that fits when like there is like most people haven't lived through any of them. In regards to this, like this book specifically, if you mean with that, you say the fragmentation, I think about the way that she writes out different parts of her personality into the different notebooks, obviously, right? And the
Yeah.
first two are communist related, um, or the British Communist Party and like the socialist like movement in Africa and
Well,
everything that
with
they're
black
going
and red, you're getting like social strata, you're getting race relation, you're getting
through.
socioeconomic. I mean, it's check every bingo card for your essay about society, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
And
all in those two.
and in terms of relating to it, like none of us were experiencing what it was like to be a communist or a socialist back in that era by any means, or like what that kind of fight was about.
We're not. No, we weren't. We definitely weren't.
I was
Rhodey. Do you ever see that movie with what is it called? Blood Diamond? Did you watch Blood Diamond? It's
I don't
aged
think
perfectly,
so.
by the way. It has Leonardo DiCaprio
Oh,
has a really bad South African, I think. I don't know if he speaks Afrikaans or not, but he has
God, I hope not.
somebody asks him where he's from, and he goes, "I'm from Rhodesia." And someone says, I think it's called Zimbabwe, mate. And then he also has a line in it,
oh
you know,
my God.
over in America, that's how it kind of says. In America, it's all bling bling. Out here, it's bling bang.
Oh
Oh my
my
It's like
God.
I would watch the whole movie just for those two scenes, the Rhodesia and the bling bang. But
I
Oh
feel like
dear God.
that's the line for the
gorgeous.
trailer too.
It
But
probably should be.
but what freaked me out though is again, so this is written in what, 52 or something, published in
62 is when it comes
54.
out, I think.
Okay.
I'll double check.
Early
Yeah,
50s.
62.
I'm gonna plant my flag, and it was okay. Copyright 62. So all right, so she probably wrote it early 60s or
Hmm.
late 50s. I'm
Did find out something
assuming
about that.
this took a little while to write. Uh,
Which is okay, so that's interesting. Keep going. I'm going to tell you something.
okay, so we'll say early 60s,
Hmm.
late 50s, early 60s, writing this. Um, we're getting all this fragmentation, and just from the so far, what I'm noticing in the black notebook and the red notebook, um, she's illustrating and showing all the cracks, the problems uh, within these two notebooks that's kind of going towards cynicism in the eventually in the end. And it's almost like she's like, all right, this whole fragmentation thing's interesting, and what can we really know? But I don't think we're gonna like the end result that we get if we pursue this for too long. And she's writing about it in 1959, 1960, whenever, and the rest of us catch up and figure it out maybe late 90s.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Oh, I
it's
see what you're saying.
freaking
Yeah.
genius. It's absolutely genius. She is a witch, and we need to
We need to worship her feet.
yeah, and worship at her feet. No, it's absolutely genius. I'm probably off in the wrong area because I haven't read the whole thing yet, but that's where my mind's going. Like she's calling her shot, and she's right, I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I mean,
40 years before anybody had a clue that
the
I know of. It's impressive.
that
And
the
I know there's much smarter people that are going to hear this and be like, oh, actually, I can show you seven other books that did the exact same thing. This isn't unique to her, but I haven't read seven books. So
It's
that
unique
sort
to
of
Brian listeners.
there 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 is that kind of like split. Like I can't think of too many off the top of my head, but I can think of a few of like books from probably around the same era that are either like the pro-communist socialist party, like as a way of like trying to, level things, that there are all these inequalities, that there are like this is a hope. And I do like the lines in this where they're talking about how like we stick with these beliefs because we think that maybe the ideal could happen. Maybe things could get better. Even if it's not working out, we still stick with it. We still stick with this routine because maybe things will get better. There's that sort of book. And then there's an equal number of books
and
that say,
then we get Tommy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like this isn't going to go well for Tommy.
And then Tommy's having some issues. Tommy's
You guys totally screwed up Tommy. This generation's fucked.
just like every generation ruins the next. Good job. Well done. Well played.
Yep.
I mean that does seem to be a theme a little bit like with
Yeah.
what's his name? Is it George that has the kid with the cook's wife? Um yeah, so there there's
Which is very James to put a pin in that.
yeah, that's true. That's
Very
quite true.
Huckleberry Finn moments.
I didn't even think of that, but that's absolutely
Oh,
true.
it's the
But they're also
first
like the
step.
books that are anti this, where they're like everything was a fraud. It was all bullshit. It didn't work. It's like all this and the things that she points to where it's like there's the line, the party line, the center that's dictating things. This all is like we know that things are wrong in Russia, but we can't say it. We all have to like stick to this. This is all fucked up. And it's not helping anyone. It's not helping the Africans. It's not helping these social groups in any way. And then you get that enormous backlash where it's like, oh, we're just gonna, in America at least, we're just gonna put you all in jail or blacklist you because you're a pinko. And then the Rosenbergs are mentioned in here. There's all that kind of stuff that goes really awry in America at least. But
I mean, and
yeah.
not I don't want to derail your train of thought, Chad, but
Oh, I don't. I'm done.
you guys are it's interesting that you guys are Brian asked about the sort of form and structure of the book, and now we're getting into the part that I feel like I was more focused on, especially when I first started reading it, is the historical aspects. I mean, I think it's very fascinating to read a book from a perspective, and this is something we talked about briefly last week of like I think we did say Lessing says something similar in her or to the effect in one of the introductions that like people forget that communism started out from a good place, like a place of truly wanting to, and in her words, from wanting to benefit the world and to make the world a better place. And so for me, the historical aspect of reading something from a pro-communist or sort of pro-communist perspective, and they do get into a little bit of the like, why are we like why what even is pro-communist? Like, are we pro-communist? Do we want to be in the party? And there's that feeling I think we touched on also last week where Anna says or makes a comment that her reason for why she would leave the party is that she joined it to be a collective and she feels so lonely in it. Um, but that historical part and then all the history about colonies and colonizing in Africa and like I'm looking up the Mau Mau and
That's
all those fights and all those rebellions and just like holy shit, this is a part of the world that I don't know
That's what I was
anything
wondering if you were
about.
going to talk about, Brian, in terms of the homework, was simply like
Mm,
some of the backdrop of what's going on there in Zimbabwe at the time, or Rhodesia as it was at the time.
Yeah.
No, I
Uh,
read Things Fall Apart in college. I don't need to know any more about Africa.
Good. Sold.
I'm cool. I'm so cool now.
So here's the thing
No,
I was going
I
to tell
didn't.
you. Oh, sorry. Go
Yeah.
on.
No, go ahead.
This is what I was going to tell you about when you said like when she was writing and all that. So here's the thing that was I got a book out on of the library on Doris Lessing, but I have not looked at it much. But I did flip open to the section on Golden Notebook and it referenced this, and I was like, this can't be. And I looked, and they were absolutely right. So in 1952, she starts the Child of Violence series with Martha Quest. Comes out in 1952. Second volume, Proper Marriage, comes out in 1954. A Ripple from the Storm, which is 350 pages long, comes out in 58. Suddenly, she diverts from that series and writes the Golden Notebook in 62. So that would be that time that you're talking about. And obviously, this is long. Then in 65, she has Landlocked, which is 450 pages. And then 4 years later, has the four what is it? The Four Gated City, which is 700 and some pages. That is an insane amount of output for a very short period of time, especially in which you're writing a series and you write 3 volumes and then stop, write this giant ass tome, and then go back to write like 2 giant books for that series. Like, would you talk about like how she just it took some time? Apparently for her, this shit does not take time. She's just like
No,
rolling this out, not like Joyce Carol Oates style, but like that's a lot of production for like a concentrated time.
And she says in the intro that she wrote this, like, she didn't write it in parts and then piece it together. She wrote the book essentially as it is,
Which makes
which
the
is also,
juxtapositions interesting. I mean, I know that like at this point, like 159 pages in, the communist stuff is both interesting, historically interesting, sort of like in terms of personality building, interesting, where you see like her relationship to sex is very like
mhm.
uh like part of the socialist communist thing influences her views on sex and on relationships. So you're starting to get part of that. But it also can be okay, let's get out of the communist stuff and yeah, the British Communist Party is whack. The whole political situation is whack. I want to get back a little bit to Tommy and to Molly and Anna in the present moment, post Communist Party. Um, so I can understand where like some readers would be like, this is a little bit much at this point in time. Like let's get it going because it's not as relevant to our world anymore. Now it's like, are you a fascist or are you on the side of freedom, rather than like, are you pro like capitalist democracy, or do you think that there should be like collectives to benefit the society and people as a whole? Like that it almost seems so quaint to look back at, even though it was like a really big deal, obviously, and like the world was sort of modeled after these two opposing viewpoints that politically were at quote unquote war for with each other for so long. And nowadays it's like, yeah, that's less relevant than the fact that we have these dictatorships popping up all over again, like populist dictatorships. Cool.
you know, it does also make politics seem kind of like spring break.
I
Spring
was going to say that
break.
too, where it's like the like Billy is always reading his stuff and studying. He's always like, I've got to study, I got to do the education. He's like, he's doing the homework, he's reading the pages, he's going through those books,
Yeah.
thinking real
Reading
hard.
instruction grammar, reading instruction
Everybody
grammar.
everyone else is playing piano and fucking and drinking and like they're like in terms of what they're doing for their like communist work and to advance the communist ideology is like having a meeting every so often where they all get into fights with each other about like whether they should do like one form of political things or the other, and then they just
Yeah.
break off into sections, even with the British one where they're like, should we vote for the liberal, should we vote for the Labor Party, or should we only vote for the Communist Party because we know we're going to lose and we don't want to split the vote because we want to make sure that the Tories don't get in, but we also have to stay with our side. It's like Ralph Nader voters circa 2000.
Yeah, ultimately it's dogmatic, it's meaningless. It's like, what are the point of these meetings? Like, it's, you're spinning your wheels doing nothing. Like your party is nothing. You're doing nothing. You're helping no one. You're making everyone disillusioned.
I mean,
That's
when I was in college, there were Marxist clubs, like and Trotsky ones. Like they were on their own separate club, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the point of also showing their time in Rhodesia and like the listlessness surrounding it. And then I do get confused about why the Air Force, like why Paul, because I don't actually know, I'm assuming there's a base nearby at that time. The UK has a base nearby, or is
I
it just
I assume
like,
they have bases everywhere. I mean,
yeah,
this would be yeah, they would be protecting the world from Hitler
or
up
yeah,
at that point.
or protecting Africa from itself. But the thing also, as you guys are saying these things, like they're also essentially kids. Like how old? So we know for a fact Paul is 20.
Yeah.
So how old do you guys think the rest of them are?
I was gonna say like up to 24 maximum.
So Billy is 24 and he's like old man already.
That was my assumption, Brian.
I don't know.
I
But
don't
I mean, still 20, like that wasn't at the time
He
that,
used to get married at 16, have a kid at 17, fight
well,
in the
yeah,
war at 19.
yeah. I mean, like I don't remember if Anna says about how long she had been in the area, like been there before she started hanging out and go like with the party members, with the Stephen, the husband. But like or how many years she had been in Africa. But it seems like a fucking lifetime. And then they're just so young.
yeah.
And the way that they talk about everything, even Paul for being 20, like can you imagine any 20-year-old you know talking that way about the world or just having formed ideas about the world? I mean, like, okay, also fair, the world was in a much different place. I was about to say much scarier, much darker, but that wouldn't be like factual. I think that's relative, but that I found myself thinking a lot about that this time around, that these are not people who have been on the world for 3 decades. Like they're still really, really young comparatively.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like they used Rhodesia as a training base for a spot for training pilots in the British Air Force for sure. And because of the various like colonized areas from Italy and the other countries, Rhodesia and Africa is like a spot for World War II in terms of like there's potential to like that's a part of the world grabbing and the all the sort of territory taking over. So there is a long it's not super whatever. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but basically it does seem to be like this all makes sense. It all tracks exactly with what she's saying, which does not surprise me seeing that she grew up there.
Yeah.
I know all that. But yeah, I get you saying they do feel like very young, but that also is the spirit of rebellion, right? Like Molly's husband, whose name I'm blanking out on, he's not going to be doing any shit like this. He's old. Once you get old, you become a dirty capitalist. You want your
Yeah.
IRAs.
Is it Richard? Is
Richard.
it?
Yeah. Yep. Dick. That's what
He's the capitalist
he's a
pig.
hyper capitalist pig.
Yeah.
Doesn't believe in any of this bullshit. So,
What
yeah.
do you guys
Go on.
No, I was gonna ask what you guys think of the other people. Paul and Billy and Mary Rose and
I want more Mary Rose. Mary Rose like
Mary.
is an enigma here. She seems super sexy and like intriguing to everyone and has like cadre of followers and like and is alluded to frequently as being like I mean she's also into incest, so she's intriguing. And like everyone seems to be kind of in love with her, but like she never really does anything. She talks about the incest, but she doesn't really like exist in the book much. So I kind of wanted more of her because we spent a lot of time like hearing about Paul and George and Billy to a lesser extent and Jimmy to a
It's like
lesser
you're
extent.
describing a Kardashian.
I know. Yeah,
This,
exactly.
they don't
She
really do anything.
doesn't really do anything. She's like hanging out, letting all the boys
Family,
hit
just
on her.
all the family hanging out together, just whatever. What are they doing though?
I, I
She does bop George one though on the nose.
Yeah, she does. I do like the story, the cook of the cook's wife, and the tensions, the racial tensions that come up between the owner of the hotel and George and the rest of them. And that part is like both like seems very true to life, very like sad in terms of like the treatment of people and just like the cruel treatment of people. But I was also like very intrigued by that. And I did like the idea that within this work of fiction, she's created a couple other works of fiction, one that's uh, supposedly real, and then a work of fiction based on those real things, but that amalgamation of them, like I was saying, where like George and Paul get merged into one character for her book. And they add in like the sexual tension with the hotel owner's wife that isn't really present in they joke about it, but it isn't present in the quote unquote real section of the Black Notebook, but it shows up in Anna's invented fictional version of that, which is all then within this larger fictional universe that Doris Lessing has created. And something about like those levels of it I find very intriguing and almost
Yeah.
like it's not like she's showing her work, but kind of like this is how a writer can like take these various things and kind of weave them together. We never see Anna's novel, but hearing about it and like making some assumptions based on the parody plot that she gives, like you can kind of see like how it's like, yeah, that makes sense. You had this experience, you sort of rewrote it into fiction. It does have elements that make it like a kind of like romantic pot boiler or whatever, and that tracks. And that's cool. And then you can think about like, is Doris Lessing sort of doing that too? She was a member of the British Communist Party, fell away from it, got rid of them, even though then MI6 like followed her forever. But like that, so she's rejiggering all that stuff too, the way that like writers do. But it's kind of, I just find that kind of interesting in here, even though it's like a trite thing to say. I just think it's kind of cool to see it on those kind of levels in this case.
Do you notice the difference? I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff because I'm part of the problem as well. But the difference in the way some women write about sexuality and sex versus the way male authors write about sex.
Like Jonathan
And
Lethem versus Kathy Acker.
sure. But like, it was making me thinking like when the way Anna describes sex and writes about sex, I find just hilarious in this. I really like it. Compared to like something like French Lieutenant's Woman or something like the male like this ravenous like passionate male sex like this predatory way of writing about sex, and this one's just so like eh, eh. I'm absolutely loving uh yeah, this exploration of these like particularly Anna and Molly. What is their like? How do they navigate this place? How are they? What is their role in like? What is their role? What the way they talk to each other, the way they talk when men are around. I'm finding this so fascinating and so
Yeah.
interesting. The way she explores this in this book.
I think related to what you're saying and like the kind of part of it, like the fact that they kind of allude to Molly's like European vacation as being sort of like there's hints that it's like, filled with dalliances, but like they don't dwell on it. They don't make it like a main thing. And I feel like if a male was writing this, that would have been a longer conversation about that specific element
Yeah,
of the trip.
yeah,
And for them, they're just like, yep, just going on. Like, they don't have to draw attention to
yeah,
it. They don't have to like,
yeah.
hone in on it. I think that that's cool. Nice thumbs up, man.
Yeah. As the woman on the podcast, I yeah, I do agree that it's very interesting. Um not so dissimilar from Kathy Acker. I'm trying to find the right words for it. It's like sex. It's not that it's not transactional and it's not so steeped in emotion, but I'm going to take something from how Anna describes her and Billy's relationship is that it's like one step away from being asexual. So I'm going to take that and say that that Lessing is almost making sex an asexual thing while still having it be sex. If that, I don't know. I'm really grasping for an idea of a concept, but like even with Richard being in the kitchen in the first part that we were at last week and talking to them, like Molly had a relationship with them, Anna almost had a relationship with him, and they're all aware of that. But I think to your point, Brian, it's not like a thing.
it's not a big deal.
It's like a fact. It's
Yeah.
like it's like
Okay.
we all, and the same with the group in at the Mashopi Hotel. I mean, like more than once it says it's like there like yeah, there's always a sexual tension, but it's not a sexual tension by that name. It's just like I mean,
Yeah, because like the cliche male thing would be like
George.
he recalled the taste of her lips and
Oh
had a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
longing for it, and
Yeah.
he felt a surge in his loin as he remembered the passionate nights they had. It's like she just like no, like I'm not gonna. That's not the way this works.
No, and Paul and
Yeah, it
Anna
was a
who
thing
felt
that, but that was like several seasons ago. What about
yeah.
this like shitty son I have? Is he gonna get a job or not? Like,
Yeah.
right?
And
Like
then
I got
Paul, sorry, go ahead.
no, like I was just gonna keep riffing, but something smarter would be better.
Um, like Paul and Anna hooking up in the Veld, like I remember the first time that I read it thinking did they like actually do anything or was it because it's not explicitly said,
Yeah.
but it's more about the environment and the being swept away with the feeling that not even ultimately brings them to that act, but like the act of sex is a small part in that entire experience of being swept away in the emotions. It's their last weekend and all these other things coming to head. I think it's very fascinating. I think it's very
And, and that
great.
one with
Same with
Paul
the
though
Decker stuff.
doesn't have a bit of a political edge to it in a way. Like it's sort of a statement and it is like a reclaiming of her autonomy and ability to do that. Like, because she does keep referring to her and Billy have like an asexual relationship, but like that ends it because she's like sort of pissed and then does this. And that's kind of the end of their relationship. Um, and like the politicization of like female sexuality is something that I think Doris Lessing either like I'm putting words in my mouth and I'm not a female, so I shouldn't probably be saying this, but it seems like something that she sort of like battles with in the terms of like how in her intro she's like everyone sees this as men versus women, and this sort of element, and she's like that's not really what I was trying to do. Sure, whatever,
Yeah.
like it's a feminist thing, but like part of that program seems to be like the control of your sexuality is like a an important tenet of like the feminist movement at that time, and she's like both talking about that and also like not wanting to draw like all the attention to that, like not making it just about that element.
Yeah, and I think like George very much seems to be a man and Anna says it and Mary Rose hints at it of like there's something to that type of male who wants to possess a woman just to possess her and they both find an attraction to it and I think they both also acknowledge that they understand it's like a societal like they've been kind of programmed to think that way and
Mhm.
they both turn him down for the same reasons of they know that it would not lead to anything more than that or that they would not be satisfying in the right ways um and I think that's how I read the last interaction with Villy is that she and Paul have sex and then she comes back and Villy's like, "Where were you?" And she says, "You know where I was." And he says, "Come here." And then she says, it's kind of ick, the only time he really wants to make love to her is to reclaim her. And I don't remember which one of you used that word. And at the same time, pages before, she's talking about how George kind of facelessly kind of wanting to just claim women. But George also just like kind of free loves to love and loves to fuck women. It grosses her out. It's gross and it's not at all what she wants. And I think and it's not said in so many words, but I think that is why she's just like, the thing with Billy, like it's done. That reclamation of your female property is just it's gross and it's beneath all of them.
Yeah,
Reclamation of female property. Yeah, that is
that's
gross.
that's a tough phrase.
Jeez. I
Christ
like it.
almighty. The Here's the two paragraphs that you're referring to. I went over to him and he gripped my wrist and brought me down beside him. I remember lying there and hating him and wondering why the only time I could remember him making love to me with any conviction was when he knew I had just made love to somebody else. That incident finished Vili and me. We never forgave each other for it. We never mentioned it again, but it was always there. And so a sexless relationship was finally ended by sex. So
Wow.
to what you're saying, very, very powerful shit. So I'm gonna have to get going. So do you guys have a favorite line?
Yes.
What's yours?
On page 115,
Okay.
middle of that first paragraph, it's Anna saying, she says, I don't think I really
Hold
saw
on. I gotta lick my fingers to get to
Ah, sorry,
115.
Brian.
Hold on. Sorry. These stupid. Okay, ready.
Um, so Anna, yes, Anna's saying, I don't think I really saw people then, as in the time in Africa. I don't really think I saw people then, except as appendages to my needs. It's only now, looking back, that I understand, but at the time I lived in a brilliantly lit haze, shifting and flickering according to my changing desires. Of course, that is only a description of being young.
I like that. I like that.
That's good.
I have two that tie together. There are on adjacent pages too, 152 and 153. 152 is we believed everything was going to be beautiful and now we know it won't. And then on 153, when she's having dinner with John, the British communist, the reason why we don't leave the party is that we can't bear to say goodbye to our ideals for a better world. I think both of those are speak to the thing I mentioned earlier about like, why does this stay on? Because
Yeah.
you're like, no, maybe, maybe, maybe.
Yeah.
But alas, we should all know entropy always wins.
It's interesting that there's an interesting parallel with the dissolving of relationships, but and wanting to dissolve the relationship with the party as well. Like realizing we had good intentions, but it ends up this is just going to be sexless and fruitless
And
Yeah.
lonely. And
and
lonely.
lonely. Yeah, she's a pretty smart writer. Good Lord. All right, I've
Yeah.
got. I'm gonna go with 155. Stalin died today. Molly and I sat in the kitchen upset. I kept saying, "We are being inconsistent. We ought to be pleased."
I like one thing I
You're
do
just
like
gonna
it.
stop with Stalin died today.
Someone died today.
Favorite line. Stalin died today.
I was always gonna go with my favorite line is all
That one
very
would work.
odd, isn't it? Which Molly must say like 4,000 times. All very odd, isn't it? Love that when a character has a catchphrase. So anything you guys want to plug or mention?
I do want to plug that in my head, the character's name is Willie.
I know I said that last week and then Kaya corrected me, so I just
Well,
adopted her
because
If you're a dumb
dramatic.
American, it's Willie.
because because he's German and because I listened to the audiobook and the audiobook
Willie.
narrator said Willy,
I
which
like
would be
Willie better.
consistent with Wilhelm.
Wilhelm. Helmet.
Helmet.
Helmut.
All these amazing German names that exist. Cool. If you're interested in French fiction, check out the Mining the Delphi Archive stuff. There's two posts this week, and there's going to be one tomorrow, and there's going to be or one on Friday, and then a bunch next week, all related to Barbara Wright, great translator, and some of the French authors that she worked with. Kai, you got anything?
Yeah, if you have not pre-ordered already, please pre-order VZ of Volodymyr Zelensky and the Making of a Nation, coming out from Open Letter later this year by University of Rochester's writer in exile Dmitry Bykov, translated by John Friedman. There's always, unfortunately, constantly everyday shit going on with our country's government that is making things harder for Ukraine, and everyone, I believe, should be pro-Ukraine. And Dimitri's book is just a great historical reportage, political receipts perspective on Zelensky's trajectory as a person and politician. And it also gives a lot of insight to what things, not why things are at, but I don't know, man. I don't know how else best to like try to talk about it without making it a gross marketing thing, but it's a really important piece of work.
Yeah, it's
And
really good.
you can pre-order it from the Open Letter website. You can pre-order it, I believe, by badgering your favorite bookstores, who will then pre-order it for you. But everyone should definitely check it out.
100%. 100%, definitely. It'd be good if we were marketing that a little bit more online. I have one last thing and then I gotta go is go Wolves, fuck Luca. Let's end this thing. By next week, I want Timberwolves second round be rolling. Howl, keep howling. I think that's it. No, actually, the real phrase is just Nas read.